Okay, so I wasn't sure where to start with these videos. I've been kind of in full project mode, building a bunch of different stuff, and things are starting to kind of pile up. So I figured I better get started because I'm not going to want to make any videos if this keeps up. So I figured the best place to start is with what was the catalyst for all this Mad Max craziness that's been going on in my life. So about 6 months ago, I picked up this Hydra rack from Bells of Steel, and the trolley arms came in about 6 weeks later. They were back ordered, and I had an issue with one of the trolleys. So there was an issue with the way this was welded. It was a little bit crooked, and what ended up happening is that one of the trolleys was pinching the upright too hard, and it wouldn't slide up and down the rack. It was basically jammed on it when he bolted everything together. So I contacted Bells of Steel, and they're awesome. They immediately shipped me out a replacement trolley, and unfortunately, the replacement trolley got damaged in shipping. So they sent me out another replacement, and they told me just to keep the damaged pieces. They don't want them back, just to throw them out. And being a person that does not like to throw out things, I kept them kicking around the basement for about a month until all this crazy stuff started happening. I started getting all these ideas of what I could do with them. So before I get into that, I'm just going to do a little review on the trolleys themselves and what I ended up upgrading on them before I get into what I started building afterwards. So originally, these things come with steel rollers. And so I'd watched a review from Gluck, and he had mentioned that he didn't love the steel rollers, and I had no intention on using them with steel rollers when I ordered them. So I have access to machining equipment, and what I ended up doing is when they first came in, I immediately took off these rollers and I duplicated the steel roller out of UHMW, and I just transferred the bearings and the sleeves onto the UHMW. The next thing was Gluck was mentioning how he wished that Bells of Steel had drilled an extra hole for the adjustment, because the first adjustment is this high, and unfortunately you can't use the lever arms for decline press if you lock the pin in this position. So what I ended up doing is I drilled an additional hole, and that allows for decline press. The other thing that I did is I'm not a huge fan of these pins because there's no protection on the backside here, and it leaves a round scratch on everything on the rack that you pin these into. So I made some UHMW washers, and that way you don't scratch everything up when you pin them in. Now, when I first mounted these, I had them mounted on the outside of the rack, which is how most people mount them. The only issue is that I have a space constraint here, and I have some equipment in the front of the rack. I have a Bells of Steel reverse hammer, and I have my power blocks stand right in front of the rack. So moving this bench in and out and turning it around was becoming really annoying for me, and it was interfering with the other equipment. So I ended up turning these around and mounting them on the inside. Now the issue is that originally these don't fit on the inside of the rack. They're about 3/4 of an inch too long to fit in there. So what I ended up doing is I took these off, I took the bumper off, and I cut these down 3/4 of an inch. And then I drilled out an additional hole and moved the bumper up and bolted it back together. So now these roll up and down and swing inside a 43-inch crossmember without interfering with anything. So that's basically the first set of upgrades that I did to the trolley. And I'm really pleased with the way these work. There's a couple of things that I would still like to change about them, but short of making entirely new trolleys, I don't know if I'm going to get into any more of that stuff. The one complaint I do have about these things is that I'm not sure why they chose to machine this down. I don't know if it was for aesthetic purposes or what, but if they had just kind of kept this piece straight and made the circle bigger, it would have allowed for more adjustment holes around it. So that's kind of like the one complaint I have about the design of these things. Otherwise, they work great. And so I'll kind of get into what ended up happening with the additional pieces. So this front piece was what they sent me as a replacement. And when I was measuring it out, I realized that the bolts where the rollers are attached to are spaced perfectly for their weight pegs. So what I ended up doing is I took off the Allen bolts that come with this. I took the sleeves off, the rollers off, and I took the sleeves out of them. I drilled out the sleeves themselves to M16 bolts or 5/8, and then I drilled the plate itself also, and then I bolted on a weight peg to it. And so what that allows for now is I can use these as weight pegs so that when I put my Titan leg press attachment on here, I can use this as a plate holder. So I can put the leg press attachment on, put this on, put the weights on, and then I can use it together. That's just the first application that kind of came to me for these. When I kind of started tinkering out a little bit more, I realized there's a bunch of other stuff you can do with this. And I'm hoping that just by doing some videos, this might kind of inspire Bells of Steel to maybe sell these on their own or have an updated version of these kind of already with all the modifications done to it as its own separate attachment that you can purchase. And I'm going to post some additional videos to kind of show you all the other stuff that I started kind of getting into with these, because they're super versatile, especially if you have some extra pieces that you want to make or extra parts that you want to buy to kind of do other stuff with. So I'm going to stop the video here for this particular application, and I'm going to start making some other videos and show you guys all the other stuff that I kind of started doing with these adapters, with all the other stuff I ended up building for them. So yeah, stick around and then you'll kind of see all the other stuff that I've been building, and you can leave some comments and let me know if there's other stuff you guys have thought of that I can kind of use these for, or other things I can end up building.